Former Senegalese President Macky Sall is aiming to become the next UN Secretary General. As his campaign gains momentum, here's a look at his political career, key achievements, and the controversies that shaped his presidency. In 2012, Senegal voted in the runoff of the presidential election, pitting former President Abdoulaye Wade against his one-time ally, then opposition leader Macky Sall. Wade's bid for a third term as president triggered violent protests in the preceding months. Sall, aged 50 at the time, had campaigned on lowering the cost of living for Senegalese, including by cutting taxes on rice, a staple food.
J'en prends toute la mesure. Ce soir, une ère nouvelle commence pour le Sénégal.
Sall emerged as the winner of the presidential elections and was declared fourth president of Senegal. Within his first few days in office, Sall traveled to France to meet French then-President Nicolas Sarkozy and signed a defense agreement stipulating military cooperation and a loan agreement from France to Senegal of €130 million. This was during a time of instability, right after a coup had taken place in neighboring Mali in March 2012. France has since fallen out of favor in the region, and in recent years, many West African countries have expelled the French military from their territories. Sall campaigned for a second term as president in 2019, with his main opponents being Idrissa Seck, who was himself a former prime minister, but who had spent months in prison in 2004 on charges of embezzlement, and Ousmane Sonko, whose relative youth and activism, over which he got sacked from his role as tax inspector in 2016, made him popular. Ultimately, Sall won the election and stood to serve his second term as president of Senegal. During the global COVID-19 pandemic, Senegal initially enforced strict lockdowns to curb the spread of the virus. However, citizens protested against the dusk-to-dawn curfews, as many were hungry, unemployment was rife, and the economy ground to a halt during the pandemic's lockdowns. In April 2020, Sall launched a large-scale operation to distribute over $105 million worth of food aid to 1 million households considered vulnerable to assist in alleviating the effects of the COVID-19 restrictions. In 2023, as Senegal was recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and experiencing instability in the region, it also started preparing for its next round of presidential elections in 2024. Sall announced in July 2023 that he would not run for a third term in office as the country's president. He said his government would ensure peaceful, free, and transparent elections the next year, following weeks of fresh opposition unrest over fears he might run for a third term and sideline a key rival. But on February 3, 2024, mere days before the Senegalese presidential election, slated for February 25, 2024, Sall announced that he would postpone the elections, citing a dispute over the candidate list. Supervised Senegalese voters were due to choose a successor to President Sall, who was not seeking a third term. For the first time in Senegal's history, the incumbent was not on the ballot. Senegal had never before delayed a presidential vote. Its four largely peaceful transitions of power via the ballot box since independence from France in 1960 have built up its reputation as one of West Africa's most stable democracies. However, Sall's decision had led to widespread discontent, and the country erupted in deadly protests, and the Constitutional Council ultimately struck the decision down. Since then, Sall remains a divisive figure in the country. Senegal's Court of Auditors said Sall's government understated debt and deficit figures, implying about $7 billion in hidden borrowing, a number that later ballooned and was estimated by S&P Global Ratings at about $13 billion as of last July, a quarter of the country's $40 billion economy. Sall denies any wrongdoing. Since ceding his position as president, Sall has continued to participate in diplomatic forums as elder statesman. He moved to Morocco, where he now lives. In March 2026, Burundi put Macky Sall's name forward as a possible candidate for UN Secretary General. The Security Council is due to elect its 10th leader, and the chosen candidate will take over from Antonio Guterres on January 1st, 2027. Thousands of Sall's supporters lined the streets leading to the military airbase in Dakar on Friday, July 17, 2026, to welcome Sall for his first official return to the country since ceding office in 2024. He met with President Bassirou Diomaye Faye before leaving Dakar immediately afterwards. He said the visit was part of the consultations and visits I have undertaken in connection with my candidacy. But he said he anticipated having the opportunity to return to Dakar on another occasion to meet with activists and supporters. Police fired tear gas to disperse the crowds filling the streets, carrying banners, flags, and vuvuzelas as Sall's convoy passed to the presidential palace for the meeting between Faye and Sall.